අද්විතීය 200 Mbps ස්පීඩ් එකකින් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ වේගවත්ම සහ පුළුල්තම හෝම් බ්‍රෝඩ්බෑන්ඩ් සම්බන්ධතාවය වන SLT මොබිටෙල් දේශීය ෆයිබර් බලවේගය ඔබත් අදම අත්විඳින්න.
හරිම සුදුයි.
Tonight on First at 9, this Saturday, the 15th of July 2023. Vital, Sri Lanka's partnership with India, essential for a robust economic recovery and growth, highlights Foreign Minister Ali Sabri.
There are a number of areas we want to deal with India, particularly on the economic front, power connectivity and investment from the Indian side on power sector, renewable energy.
Advancing, Sri Lanka's talks with international creditors progressing, says global lender IMF.
We recognize that the debt restructuring process needs to accelerate, it needs to be predictable, and it needs to provide breathing space to debtor countries.
Aviation reforms. The restructuring process for Sri Lankan Airlines will be transparent, assures Aviation Minister.
IFC to prepare to evaluate and give the necessary information to the people who are interested and then prepare the tender documents.
Says the recovery of Sri Lanka's aviation industry will be above world average.
If you have a comparison with the international scenario, we are very much forward.
Alliance Finance මෙතුරු රන්නයි සේවාවෙන් රන් පවුම්කට රුපියල් 1,70,000ක ඉහළ අධිකාරම.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දිනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
This is AdaDerana First at 9 with Ndivari Amuata. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a warm welcome. You're joining us on your primetime English news bulletin, and we take you straight to your top stories. As Sri Lanka's debt treatment talks with international creditors continue, we focus our top stories on the progress made. State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinghe says Sri Lanka reached an agreement with the country's external creditors in order to bring down the country's indebtedness, foreign debt servicing and financial requirements. The State Minister went on to say that Sri Lanka must strategically work on a way forward to achieve goals immediately, adding that Sri Lanka will take its way out of the crisis if these targets set for 2032 are met.
A conference on domestic debt optimization organized by the Trade Union Relations Divisions at the Presidential Secretariat was held in Colombo yesterday. The conference was attended by State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinghe.
අපේ ණය බරතාවේ 128ක් වුණා 100ට දළ දේශීය නිෂ්පාදිතයෙන් අපේ ණය ප්‍රමාණය. අපි මේක අරගෙන එන්න ඕනි 95 දක්වා අඩු කරගන්න ඕනි 2032 වෙද්දී. 2032 කලේ යුතු කාර්ය අපිට 2030 31 වෙනකන් ඉඳලා කරන්න බෑනේ. එතකොට ඒකට අද ඉඳන්ම අපි සැලසුම් සහගතව ගමන් කරන්න වෙනවා. අපේ විදේශීය ණය සේවාකරණය අද 9.4ක් අපේ නිෂ්පාදිතයෙන් තියෙනවා. අපි ඒක ක්‍රමානුකූලව 4.5 දක්වා අඩු කරගන්න ඕනේ. ඊළඟට අපිට මූල්‍ය අවශ්‍යතාවයක් රටේ තියෙනවා. වර්තමානයේ මේ මූල්‍ය අවශ්‍යතාවය 34.6යි. දළ දේශීය නිෂ්පාදිතයෙන් මේක 13ක් දක්වා අඩු කරගන්න. මෙන්න මේ ඉලක්ක තුන වෙත ගමන් කිරීම සඳහා තමයි අපි අපේ ණය හිමියන් එක්ක එකඟතාවයක් ඇති කරගෙන තියෙන්නේ. එහෙම වුණාම තමයි මේ ඇති වෙලා තියෙන අර්බුදයෙන් අපිට රට මුදවා ගන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ.
While highlighting that Sri Lanka is an example of countries that have adhered to a debt restructuring process outside the G20 common framework, Director of Communications of the IMF, Julie Kozak, highlighted the discussions between Sri Lankan government and the creditors are progressing. Addressing a media briefing, the IMF executive said that it is important to ensure that debt restructuring provides breathing space for nations with debt vulnerabilities.
If you could talk about regarding the G20 and debt distress.
We do know about the challenges of debt globally. We have many, particularly of our low-income and vulnerable countries, at or near debt distress. And for many of these countries, they require debt restructuring or debt treatment. The G20's common framework has been delivering on on debt restructuring cases, such as the ones that you've mentioned, Chad, Ghana, and Zambia. And also, debt restructuring has been proceeding in countries outside of the common framework, such as Sri Lanka. And creditor coordination is progressing. Of course, we recognize that the debt restructuring process needs to accelerate, it needs to be predictable, it needs to be timely, and it needs to provide breathing space to debtor countries through debt suspension during negotiations.
Foreign Minister, President's Counsel Ali Sabri notes that Sri Lanka views the partnership with India as vital for economic recovery and growth of the island nation. During an interview with CNN, Sri Lanka's Foreign Minister said matters pertaining to the economic front, power connectivity, power and energy investments, and improving people-to-people contact will be discussed during President Ranil Wickremesinghe's visit to India, which is scheduled next week.
How are things in Sri Lanka today?
Things are looking much better than what it compared to be last year. Inflation has come down towards about a single figure toward the mid of this month. Tourists are returning. Rupee has appreciated significantly, almost about 20% against the dollar. We have eliminated the fuel and other queues, and we have entered into a deep reforms of the economy. I wouldn't say that we are out of the wood yet, but some significant progress had been made in all sectors of the economy.
Looking ahead, talk to us about how Sri Lanka is cementing that relationship further with India in terms of port development, in terms of energy projects. What can we expect?
Sri Lankan partnership with India had been historical. Last year, they gave us a lifeline during a very difficult time. While we are negotiating with the IMF and other multilateral lenders, we had to have some sort of a bridge financing in order to fill the gap. India stepped in and provided that very, very important support to us. So we are looking at India partnership with India as vital for our recovery and also the growth. Our President Wickremesinghe will be visiting next week. I'll be accompanying him. There are a number of areas we want to deal with India, particularly on the economic front. So we are looking forward to that partnership, people-to-people contact, linking, connectivity, power connectivity, and investment from the Indian side on port, refineries, power sector, renewable energy, hospitality trade. So there are a number of issues and areas we would like to work with India, and there are a lot of momentum and kind of hype towards this. We would work together in order to build a better country for both sides, particularly in the northern region of Sri Lanka and southern part of India.
Meanwhile, Foreign Minister Ali Sabri highlighted several key areas important for Sri Lanka, including maritime security, disaster management and disaster-related confidence-building measures at the 30th ASEAN Regional Forum ministerial meeting in Jakarta, Indonesia. During the meeting, the Sri Lankan Foreign Minister also highlighted preventive diplomacy and sustenance of growth, economic dynamism and prosperity of the region as key factors for Sri Lanka. Further, he welcomed the steady advancement in the areas of cooperation in the ASEAN Regional Forum and unreservedly supported the process ongoing. The ASEAN Regional Forum is an Asia-Pacific region-centric security dialogue mechanism inaugurated in 1994 in Thailand, which seeks to promote regional development and prosperity through open and inclusive dialogue while recognizing challenges to regional peace, security and prosperity. Train operations between Colombo Fort and Kankasanture officially resumed today after a hiatus of 6 months. The operations came into effect after the successful completion of renovations on the Anuradhapura-Omante stretch of the Northern Railway line.
Over the past 6 months, the Northern Railway line has been under renovations as authorities took steps to upgrade the railway tracks earlier this year. Hence, the operations of Kankasanture-bound trains from Colombo Fort were restricted only up to Anuradhapura until the completion of the upgrading of the tracks. The upgrade of the railway tracks was handled by India's state-run Indian Railway Construction International under an Indian credit line of $91.27 million. The upgrade project spans over a distance of 128 kilometers between Mahava and Omante and is constructed in 2 phases. Under the first phase of this project, a stretch of railway line from Anuradhapura to Omante was upgraded, while the development of the railway tracks between Anuradhapura and Mahava are planned to commence next year under the second phase of the project. Following the successful reopening of the Anuradhapura-Omante stretch of the railway line on Thursday, train operations between Colombo Fort and Kankasanture returned to normalcy today, following a 6-month hiatus. The development process now allows the operation of trains at a speed of 100 km per hour, allowing commuters to complete the journey from Colombo Fort to Kankasanture in just 5 hours.
A bus which drove off the road in Demodara area left dozens injured. Now a bus drove off the road and overturned near a house in Demodara at around 10:30 a.m. this morning. The bus had been en route from Badulla to Colombo when it veered off the road and toppled over. According to the police, the bus, which was travelling at a high speed, had overturned, causing injuries to all 25 passengers who were in the vehicle at the time of the incident. Several passengers managed to get out of the bus while the others were rescued by residents in the area. The injured were then taken to the Provincial General Hospital in Badulla for treatment. Police suspect that the accident had occurred due to the inability of the driver to have controlled the vehicle at the time. This comes in a backdrop where a deadly bus accident in the Manampiti area claimed the lives of 11 passengers earlier last week. Addressing the increasing motor accidents in the country, police media spokesperson, Senior Superintendent of Police Nihal Talduwa said that 137 fatal bus accidents have occurred so far this year in the country. Now taking you to the political front, parliamentarian of the Samagi Jana Balawegaya Chaminda Vijayasiri requests the president to hold elections to form the camp that can save the country. Meanwhile, State Minister of Water Supply Sanat Nishanta believes that the incumbent government is incapable of fulfilling expectations of the people.
රනිල් ක්‍රමසිංහ මහත්තයා අපි කියනවා මේ අසාර්ථක කඳවුර තියාගෙන වා හිතනවා නම් මේ රට ගොඩ ගන්න පුළුවන් කියලා එහෙම වෙන්නේ නැහැ. නිසා අපි ඔබතුමාට යෝජනා කරනවා කරුණා කරලා මේ රට බේර ගන්න පුළුවන් ඒ කඳවුර නිර්මාණය කරන අවශ්‍ය මැතිවරණ ටික තියලා ජයග්‍රහණය කරන්න පුළුවන් තැන හදලා දෙන්න.
අපි ඉතාමත් ශක්තිමත් රජයක්. අපේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ 3-2කට අධික බලයක් අපිට තිබ්බා. අවස්ථාවාදීන් දෙතුන් දෙනෙක් එහා පැත්තට ගිහිල්ලා ආපහු මෙහා පැත්තට ඉන්න බලන් හිටියත් අපි තාමත් ඉතාම ශක්තිමත් බහුතරයක් තියෙන රජයක්.
පළාත් පාලන ඡන්දේ තියලා නැහැ. පළාත් සභා ඡන්දේ තියලා නැහැ අවුරුදු 5කින්. දැන් හදන්නේ පුළුවන් නම් පාර්ලිමේන්තු ඡන්දෙත් කල් දාන්න. ජනාධිපති ඡන්දෙත් පුළුවන් නම් කල් දානවා. හැබැයි මතක තියාගන්න මේ රටේ ආණ්ඩු ක්‍රම ව්‍යවස්ථාවට අනුව මොන ඡන්දේ කල් දැම්මත් තව අවුරුද්දයි මාසයක් යනකොට ජනාධිපති මැතිවරණයක් අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම තියන්න ඕනේ.
මේ යන ආණ්ඩුව ඔබ තමුන්නාන්සලාගේ බලාපොරොත්තු ඉලක්ක හිත සතුටු කරන්න පුළුවන් ආණ්ඩුවක් කියලා මම විශ්වාස කරන්නේ නැහැ. පෞද්ගලික මගේ අකමැති කරුණු කාරණා රාශියක් මේ ආණ්ඩුව සිදුනවා.
Well, Hollywood actors are currently staging a strike in a serious blow to the entertainment industry that could cripple film and TV productions across the United States and beyond. We'll come back with details on the other side of this break.
ගොඩමඩ පෙරලි කරන බලපුළුවන්කාරයා මහින්ද්‍රා යුවෝ ඩීමෝ වෙතින්. වැඩම ගොඩයි ගොඩම තමයි ස්වරාජ් ට්‍රැක්ටර් ඩීමෝ වෙතින්. අපේ ගෙදරත් ආපිකෝ මෙට්‍රස් තමයි. මාදිලි රසකින් යුත් මෙට්ටලුවේ ප්‍රමුඛයා. ආපිකෝ මෙට්‍රස් සැපනින්දට සැප මෙට්ට.
Welcome back to the news. Minister of Ports, Shipping and Aviation Nimal Siripal de Silva says that the restructuring process of Sri Lankan Airlines will be transparent with the appointment of the International Finance Corporation of the World Bank as a transaction advisor. He made these comments while addressing a media briefing at the Civil Aviation Authority. Meanwhile, Director General of the Civil Aviation Authority, P.A. Jayakantha, revealed that Sri Lanka will allow the private sector to enter ground handling, catering and jet fuel supply operations at airports in the country.
The world scenario is that we are more than the world average of the recovery process. Sri Lanka is very much better in the recovery process. The media, they say Sri Lanka is failing, but if you have a comparison with the international scenario, we are very much forward. We have recovered the airline industry and we are moving forward. International airlines have complete confidence on Sri Lanka. We are best in the region as far as the safety of the airlines are concerned. We should maintain it. We can't come down. We should do better.
The Minister Minister mentioned about Sri Lanka being ahead. Yes, Sri Lanka actually ahead of the average in Asia, 71% in April. I'm quite sure that as the ecosystem ramp up, stronger numbers by the end of the year. So that's the good news, that we can be optimistic that recovery is on its way. Momentum is very strong, trajectory is in the right direction. But now we need to work together to make sure that the restart aviation recovery is in the right pathways, which is why all the stakeholders to get together, collaborate on what needs to be done, a more sustainable aviation landscape as we build into the future.
It was the clear evidence that the past audit conducted by the international organization, they assure that Sri Lanka is the highest standard in security and we are the best in the region. The result is 92%. That is the effective implementation of international standards. An earlier audit, it is very clearly mentioned that the Sri Lanka safety standards, we achieved 87.5%. Now I am sure that we have not compromised it. We maintain the same standard or higher than that by now. The Sri Lanka governments, in the process of inviting the private parties to provisions of services such as ground handling service and jet fuel supply and also the catering services at our international airports. Previously, the legislation itself prevented such functions. We have invited number of airlines to come to Sri Lanka. On our invitations, number of airlines are ready to come and most of the airlines, they have increased their frequencies and also at the same time, we try to develop our domestic aviation as well. Then the Alliance Air, they agreed to come from Jaffna to Ratmalana. They will start their operation very soon.
Earlier, I have suggested two options. One, Sri Lanka catering, ground handling and Sri Lankan Airlines. Either we can restructure these three separately or together. So then, when it went before the Cabinet of Ministers, they thought it fit to get an international opinion on this. People who have done this type of restructuring work in the international arena, we have appointed the company IFC to prepare to evaluate and give the necessary information to the people who are interested and then prepare the tender documents. So it will be a very transparent procedure.
Is there any fresh from the IATA by the government side to prevent further exodus of Sri Lankan pilots for
Yeah. 216 pilots stay here now in Sri Lanka. They may be getting a higher pay, but if they go to Dubai or if they go to Singapore, their living expenses are high. Still, there are people who want to remain in Sri Lanka. So if they go, we will take these people, or we will get foreign pilots and see the airline is run.
Now, from overseas, we have to report is a historic Hollywood shutdown, which began as striking actors joined film and television writers who have been on picketing lines since May, deepening the disruption of scores of shows and movies. Now, the first full day of a strike by the Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, had an immediate effect on Hollywood as the industry ground to a halt over a contract with producers that would cover such wide-ranging issues as compensation and the future of an AI in film and television.
For the first time in 63 years, both the Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, and the Writers Guild of America simultaneously took to the streets of Los Angeles in a bid for fairer pay, better working conditions, and addressing the concerns of AI use in production. About 160,000 performers stopped work at Thursday midnight, joining the 11,500 members of the Writers Guild of America who had walked out of work since early May. By noon yesterday, union members and their supporters had gathered outside the offices of major studios and streaming services in Los Angeles, New York and other cities. Productions likely to be affected include sequels of the Avatar, Deadpool and Gladiator franchises, as well as the upcoming seasons of shows such as Stranger Things, Family Guy and The Simpsons. The demonstrations have received support from some of the biggest celebrities in the movie and television business, including the stars of the upcoming Oppenheimer movie who walked off the red carpet on Thursday night. Accordingly, red carpet premieres, promotional interviews and events including the Emmys and Comic-Con have already been halted, rescheduled or scaled back. Both writers and actors have complained that they make far less money than they used to make and that contracts have been undercut by inflation. With the prospect that the strike could roll on for months, cinemas could face problems and viewers may be left with nothing new to watch besides reality TV and live sport.
And with that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9, and we'll see you again tomorrow at the same time. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.